Imagine a world without writing. Not just a world without books, but a world without a fixed history and without knowledge accumulating from one generation to the next. Every idea would survive only as long as its owner remembers it, then disappear with them, along with the phrase. I'm sure I told you this before. Even the simplest matters would become complicated. How do you prove that you bought a piece of land? How do you pass on a medical recipe or a building technique without it changing every time the story is retold? Remarkably, writing, despite its greatness, was not originally invented for literature or philosophy. It was invented for something very practical: managing life when societies grew larger, transactions multiplied, and memory alone was no longer sufficient. In this video, we will trace the stages of writing's evolution, step by step, from clay and symbols to letters, print, and the digital world of today. This is where our story begins. Information left the human mind and moved onto clay. Signs transformed from counted objects into readable sounds, and then into letters that anyone could learn. And since the first problems faced by large societies were accounting, ownership, and debt, let us begin with the simplest way to preserve information: counting. Before writing, when things were counted instead of written, let us travel back in time to southern Mesopotamia, as early as the 8th and 7th millennia before the Common Era. These were early agricultural communities, long before the rise of Sumerian cities. People farmed, traded, and stored crops, and temples served as major economic centers. The first solution was to represent information using physical objects. Small clay tokens appeared, each representing a type of good or a specific quantity. A small cone might represent a measure of barley. A small sphere might represent a head of livestock. The shape itself was not important. What mattered was the shared agreement on its meaning. 3 cones meant 3 portions of barley, with no explanation or discussion needed. Imagine a farmer delivering part of his harvest to the temple. Instead of relying on speech or memory, he places the clay tokens in front of the official. No argument, no forgetting, no need to say, "Remind me later." These tokens held information on behalf of humans. Despite the ingenuity of this system, it was not writing. It was a method of counting and recording. Yet it was a crucial step. For the first time in history, a portion of human memory left the mind and settled into something that could be seen and touched. But once tokens became vulnerable to loss or replacement, record keeping itself could become a source of dispute. That created the need to seal information inside a document that would only be opened in case of disagreement. Here, in the same region, during the 4th millennium before the Common Era, a new solution emerged. Tokens were placed inside hollow clay balls, sealed tightly, known today as bully. After a transaction, the tokens representing it were placed inside the clay ball. The ball was then sealed and stamped with a special seal. This seal was not decorative. It was a tool of identification and authentication. The cylinder seal was a small object made of stone or another hard material, engraved with a unique design belonging to its owner. When rolled over wet clay, it left a continuous impression with the same details every time. Because of this uniqueness, temple or palace officials could immediately identify the seal's owner and know who had authorized the transaction. These clay balls were stored in temple warehouses or archival rooms in palaces. In case of dispute or audit, the ball would be broken and the tokens inside counted, settling the matter. Over time, the greatest challenge became managing a vast number of records and identifying their contents quickly. That pushed humanity toward the next step: drawing on the surface of clay. From objects to images on clay, around 3500 before the Common Era, particularly in the city of Uruk in southern Mesopotamia, a clever modification appeared. Instead of placing tokens inside clay balls only, scribes began drawing the shapes of these tokens, or pressing them directly onto the clay surface. The cone representing barley was drawn as a cone. The disc representing oil was drawn as a flat circle. Information became visible and readable at a glance. What was written at this stage was not yet language. There were no sentences, verbs, or names. There were only organized records of objects and quantities. But the critical shift was this: information separated from the physical object that represented it. It became a visible sign on clay. This mental transformation paved the way for the next stage, the pre-linguistic stage, when signs were no longer just images. Between roughly 3400 and 3200 before the Common Era, again in Uruk, the shapes of signs did not change much, but the way they were understood did. Until then, a symbol was read as a picture of a clear object: barley, oil, livestock, and their quantities. But as life grew more complex, this was no longer sufficient. Imagine a clay tablet showing a barley symbol next to a number. That is easy to understand, a quantity of barley. But imagine another tablet containing a barley symbol, a person symbol, and a place symbol. Now the meaning is no longer clear from the image alone. Did the person deliver the barley? Did the person receive it? Or is the person responsible for it? Meaning now depended on the order of symbols and the type of record. At this stage, the scribe began reading signs differently. They were no longer viewed as pictures. They were elements within an administrative system. The same symbol could mean different things depending on its position and context. As a result, understanding a tablet now required special training. It is important to note that this was still not a record of spoken language. There were no pronounced verbs or spoken sentences. Yet this phase was essential because it trained the human mind to grasp a new idea. A sign does not carry meaning on its own. It gains meaning from the system it belongs to. Only from here did the next step become possible: the entry of sound into writing. When signs began to be pronounced, between roughly 3300 and 3000 before the Common Era, in southern Mesopotamia, the most important transformation in the history of writing occurred. If a scribe wanted to record an event involving a specific person, it was impossible to draw the event itself. These are not objects you can simply picture. Names provide a clear example. Names are spoken, and they cannot easily be represented visually. A name like Lugal cannot be drawn as an image, but it is pronounced as Lu and Gal. So one sign pronounced Lu and another pronounced Gal were used, not for their meanings, but purely for their sounds. The name was written according to its pronunciation, not its meaning. This method was not limited to names. It was the first step toward recording spoken language itself. Once signs began to represent sounds, it became possible to express more complex ideas. Who did what, and who participated in an event. At that point, the nature of writing changed fundamentally. From then on, signs were used in two ways at once, sometimes for meaning and sometimes for sound. As a result, tablets could not be understood without formal training in temples or palaces. Trainees memorized signs, learned their multiple readings, and practiced writing with reed styluses on clay. This marked the true emergence of the scribal elite. Before the stylus became the main writing tool, scribes did not write in the strict sense. They drew signs with their fingers, or with simple tools made of wood or bone on wet clay that produced curved and inconsistent shapes. With the stylus, signs became wedge-shaped, not for beauty, but for speed. Thus, true cuneiform writing was born, a system representing spoken language, yet complex, demanding long training, and confined to a limited elite. And this is where writing truly begins. In the next part, we'll see how writing spreads and slowly becomes what we use today.